Nothing will stand in our way.
I find your lack of faith disturbing.
I will finish what you started.
Who are you? I'm no one. There are stories about what happened.
It's true. All of it.
The Force. It's calling to you.
May the Force be with us.
My nerd world.
Just let it in.
Ojaba. Why does she get a blaster and I don't? Ojaba.
I've said it before, and I'm just going to say it again. I am so thankful that we have Star Wars. I am so thankful for Star Wars. It is so therapeutic sometimes. Welcome to episode 129, Rumors and Skywalkers. I'm your host, Jon Justice, here on My Nerd World, a Star Wars podcast, and I'm very happy and thankful as well that you have downloaded the show this week. I hope that you enjoy listening as much as I enjoy talking about Star Wars for the next 45 minutes or so. All right, so on the show this week, I was totally wrong about the rumors. I thought my theories were pretty good. However, I was wrong, and those rumors that I discussed on last week's show ended up breaking right after I posted last week's show. But we really didn't get anywhere with them, and I'll explain if you're not up to speed. And if you are up to speed, I'll give you my take. Because the rumors don't really change anything that we didn't already know that we knew. So we'll get into that. I'm going to go down the road of talking a little bit of the industry and the relationship that through the rumors and the news last week between Disney and Lucasfilm, and how I guess I was looking at Disney and Lucasfilm wrong. I seem to have a better understanding now of Disney and Lucasfilm, and so I'm going to share my thoughts on that. Also, what I think Lucasfilm and Disney should be doing with the fandom. I think there are very small gestures that Lucasfilm, along with Disney's permission, could be doing to ease some of the tensions and to give us a little bit of news without giving us news. There's some very small, important things that I think that they could do that would really, really help the fandom out. And not just help the fandom out, but also, well, no, I guess it is helping the fandom out. There's little things that they could do that would really help when it comes to us podcasters when we do our weekly shows. We're going to do another visit to The Last Jedi. Watched it again over the weekend, and a slightly different take, but we'll talk a little bit about Luke's story arc, starting with A New Hope and then through The Last Jedi. Why his arc, in my opinion, was perfect, and how The Last Jedi was really a gift for Rian Johnson. I've talked a little bit about this in the past, but I'm going to expand upon it a bit. And then we are going to get to your listener feedback this week. Got quite a few responses from last week's show, so we will dive into that as well. Speaking of diving into it, let's go ahead and let's get into it.
I need someone to show me my place in all this.
Well, Ray, I am absolutely more than happy. Oh, that's dramatic. I'm more than happy to help out with that. All right, so I don't want to recap what happened leading up to this news, doing that thing with my fingers that broke last week. But there was a lot of rumblings on Twitter that there was something happening, something was going to be announced, and then right around Wednesday afternoon, this word came down from Collider, from Collider.com, and Frosty Weintraub at Collider, who basically said that their report was the spin-off films were being put on hold indefinitely in the wake of Solo's financial problems, but the trilogies for Benioff and Wise and Rian Johnson were both moving forward. Episode 9 was going to be the focus, and they were going to be focusing on one project per medium at a time. So if they're making a movie, they're just going to focus on one movie. If they're making a TV show, they're just going to focus on that TV show. And I assume that means live-action TV show and cartoon. So you wouldn't have 2 live-action TV shows being developed, you wouldn't have 2 cartoons being developed, and you wouldn't have more than one movie being created at a time. Well, then we had another report that came out, and this was from Clayton Sandell from ABC, who got official comment from Lucasfilm, who said that the report was inaccurate, that there were several movies still being worked on, along with the Benioff and Weiss and Rian Johnson trilogies, and, of course, Episode 9. Then you had MakingStarWars.net report that apparently there was some Mos Eisley spaceport film that was in the works, and that was being shelved, and that people at Pinewood who might have been working on the Obi-Wan Kenobi movie might have been working on that, and so that was the one that was really put on hold. And then you had like another Hollywood Reporter article that came out kind of laying out the same scenario again, that they were reassessing the situation. And Star Wars Newsnet also put out a report. And this is where I actually find the most interesting bit of information, and we're going to talk a little bit about this. This is where the Disney Lucasfilm part of it comes in. Their report was that Disney actually wanted to move Solo to December this year. And Lucasfilm wanted to move Solo to December. And Disney said, no, you can't. We'll give you the money that you need to get your movie finished in hiring Ron Howard to move forward with the movie, in firing or letting go or having them leave of Lord and Miller. We'll give you all the money to make your film, but we're not going to let you move it to December because we don't want it competing essentially with Mary Poppins. We're also potentially, maybe this is the reason why, Avengers Infinity War moved back a week, but they were not going to allow any extra advertising for Solo. This, to me, makes the most sense if Lucasfilm was having a problem with Lord and Miller taking too long in shooting the movie. And maybe they would have left them on if they were able to get the December release date. But they couldn't, so they had to bring Ron Howard in to take over because he would be able to direct it in a swifter manner than what Lord and Miller was doing. This makes the most sense to me. Now, we don't know if any of this is true or not, right? This is all rampant speculation. Let's talk about the movie part of it first. Then I want to get into Disney and Lucasfilm and why this is, when it comes to these rumors and this news that came out, why this is both important and not important. Okay. It's important because we're talking about Star Wars, and this is a Star Wars podcast. And it's important because we know that movies are being made, and it's important because we know that they care about these products and the content that they're putting out. And so because of all those reasons, right, this is relevant to us. But it's not important because we don't know anything more than what we already didn't know. And this is the part of it that really kind of drives me a bit nuts. You know, Lucasfilm and Disney have not announced any of these extra films. We got an official announcement on Rian Johnson's trilogy, and we got an official announcement on the Benioff and Weiss trilogy. We've never had an official announcement on Obi-Wan Kenobi or Boba Fett. We've had reports from Variety and Hollywood Reporter and wherever, Fanthatrax, right? We've had all these other reports, but none of it was ever official. So, like, I don't envy the position that Lucasfilm is in, dealing with the rampant and aggressive fandom clamoring for any little piece of news they can get. But I also don't begrudge Disney and Lucasfilm because for not releasing any information. Like, if they had announced these films and then canceled them in the wake of Solo, okay, fine. But they didn't do that. So, you know, you strip all that away. If you take away all the rumors and everything, you can't. I know that. But if you did, we have no official announcement for Obi-Wan. We have no official announcement for Fett. So just focus on the stuff that's officially announced. It's pretty simple. But I know there's a desire out there to know what's going on and what are they working on and what films are they making. And so these rumors end up getting spread. I do think that Disney and Lucasfilm, and I'll talk about this because I keep kind of conflating the two. I'll just focus on Lucasfilm. I think there are some very interesting key steps that Lucasfilm could take that could really mitigate any damage that could potentially be done with all of these rumors and reports coming out. First, let me address the Disney and Lucasfilm aspect of this. I didn't realize if these reports are true, and now that I think about it, this makes sense. I didn't realize sort of this split between Disney and Lucasfilm. Like, I never really thought about Lucasfilm working as a separate entity and having to go get permission from Disney, but I guess that would kind of be the case. Think of it this way. If, Disney buys Lucasfilm, and then you have Bob Iger, and there's some stuff about Bob Iger going around right now. I guess he apparently, Kathleen Kennedy's husband retweeted a tweet harping on Bob Iger and basically saying that it's his fault that Kathleen Kennedy keeps taking heat because of his bad decision making. Okay, so I just wanted to that just kind of came out today. But, you're Disney and you purchase Lucasfilm and you get together with Lucasfilm. Disney's going to be your distributor, they're going to be your financier, and they say, well, this is what we'd like to see. We'd like to see, an episode 7 by 2015. We want to see those saga films every 2 years. We want a standalone movie every other year in between the saga films, and we want you to build up to 2 movies a year. And this is what I want you to do. If you're Lucasfilm, you're like, all right, let's go. Here's kind of a potential. I'm not saying it's the problem because I don't know that it's the problem, but here's a potential problem with that. The potential problem with that is if an individual like Bob Iger looks at the Star Wars franchise / genre the same way he does the Marvel Cinematic Universe, then you're going to have an issue because you can't treat Star Wars the same way because it's different. It is special. I'm personally fine if we get 2 movies, and I'm personally fine if we get just 1 movie a year. And if you're going to say you have to pick one, I probably would go with 1 movie a year. I used to be of I want 2 movies a year because I love my Star Wars. But I live in the real world, and I also know that that's probably just not feasible. Unless the real world ends up accepting that not every single one of these Star Wars films is going to make $1 billion. I hate that portion of the fandom right now that just wants to get clicks and talk negative about Star Wars. I just can't. Hate's a strong word, but I just can't stand it. Star Wars is a positive thing in my life, and I don't want to hear the negative about it. And I do believe that there is something uniquely special about Star Wars, so make it a once a year Christmas event, and I'm totally cool with that. So this may have been an overestimating from Disney's part. Because I didn't really think of that Disney would be dictating, hey, you need to release these movies at this time, or that Lucasfilm would be sort of have their hands tied over what they wanted to do, because Disney was the ones, sort of making the call on when these movies are going to come out and what they're going to compete against with their other properties. I always considered them more of a unit together, but I'm now realizing these are two very separate entities, and that maybe Lucasfilm wasn't able to deliver exactly what Disney was looking for, and maybe Disney wasn't treating the Star Wars franchise the way that it needed to be treated, and realizing how special that it was. Now, here's what I believe that Lucasfilm, let's just say, Lucasfilm can do to mitigate some of the negativity that comes out when these reports come out. Well, for the first thing they can do, and I agree with a lot of others, I'm not the first one to say this by any stretch, but I believe and agree with a lot of other commentators where I wish that Lucasfilm would be a little bit more upfront and open with what's going on with their films. Even things like release schedules. Even just telling the fandom at a bare minimum, this is when we plan on the first Rian Johnson trilogy movie to be made. This is what we mean by a series of movies. There's an assumption that it's a trilogy because of what John Kasdan said during that interview with Rian Johnson and Larry Kasdan, that the Benioff and Weiss series of films was going to be a trilogy of movies. But he could have misspoken because we've been told via the official announcement that it was going to be a series of movies. So Lucasfilm could very easily say, this is our plan, and kind of leave it, the plan is to have the first of Rian Johnson's trilogy out by mid to late 2020, 2021, right? It would be amazing if they could give us a little bit of nugget as to where these films are going to be taking place. Even then, we haven't received official confirmation from Lucasfilm about what Jon Favreau's live-action TV show next year is about. We've heard from him. Now, that doesn't get much more official than that when he says it takes place a few years after Return of the Jedi, but Lucasfilm could easily go and pop that in the Star Wars show. Speaking of the Star Wars show, this is another place where I feel like that missed opportunities are taking place. And I'm sure that Lucasfilm has their reasons for why they are doing it this way, but there are very subtle, small things that you could do every week on the Star Wars show that would not reveal anything that they wouldn't want revealed, but it would give the fandom just something every week little to chew on. What if you just simply had somebody at Lucasfilm every week during the Star Wars show, right, that airs on Wednesdays, Wednesday afternoons? Why don't you just have like one person from, say, Episode 9 who just comes on and just asks sort of a question of the week? What can you tell us about any new vehicles in Episode 9? And then give us a nugget without revealing anything. We are looking at, obviously, some of those classic designs, the designs that we've already used in Episodes 7 and 8, but we're also looking at bringing in a few new vehicles and making some slight modifications to some existing vehicles. We've got one particular vehicle that we can't wait for people to go and see. Its design was inspired by a lamppost out in San Francisco. You can do little tiny things like that. You could do questions like that every single week. Environments and planets. Are we going to be visiting familiar planets in this film? Yes, JJ Abrams plans to tie into all of the existing movies in this final chapter of Episode 9, and so there will be some planets that will be familiar. They may look a little bit different than maybe what people had expected, but we will be visiting some familiar places in this film, along with visiting some new places. And again, that's enough to fill any show for any podcaster or write any article. Disney / Lucasfilm need to do more of that. You don't have to give it all away, but just open up those lines of communications a little bit. The Star Wars show last week, and no offense, I watch it every week. I like the show. But if you watch the 100th episode, again, I'm going to be negative, but I'm being honest. I was so disappointed. They did this sort of 80s, 90s variety show where they had, they had the hosts dressed up and like they were doing a variety show and having a cast of characters come out. And when I watch the Star Wars show, I want some information. And I know they're having fun. I get it. But that was the same day that all this news about the spin-off movies and all this broke, and it wasn't positive. And so I was really looking forward to the Star Wars show, and maybe I'm a little bit harsher on it because of my expectations, because I wanted some positivity or wanted something else to talk about, and yet I got this sort of goofy variety show for 10 minutes that gave us no new information whatsoever. And again, it's fun. I'm sure people liked it. There may not have been anything new to talk about, but you could put out a lot more information on the Star Wars show on a weekly basis about past movies and the future films that would really go a long way in helping the fandom deal with their own fandom. When you have, hundreds of Star Wars podcasts who do weekly shows, and all they're left to talk about and report on are the rumors that get spread around and speculation from industry insiders, that's not a good thing. We're not talking about what makes Star Wars great. We're not talking about even books or potential TV. I mean, look, you can lay out the scenario that I laid out a moment ago and apply it to the live-action TV show. Get a concept artist who's working on a live-action TV show. Can people expect to see any, how many familiar characters can we expect to see? Well, I can't really talk about characters in general right now, but I will say that fans will be really, really pleased. It won't feel completely brand new, but we are exploring some territory after Return of the Jedi that obviously we haven't seen from a visual standpoint yet, and we're really trying to convey that. Look, I'm really good. Look, you know what? Star Wars Show should just interview me every week. I'll make crap up like that, and the rest of the fandom can go and chew on it. Well, I'll tell you what. I won't even lie. Don't even make. Just give me the information, and I will dumb it down to a relevant, non-relevant soundbite for everybody to use. And then the fandom has something to talk about every single week, and we don't have to be focusing on what bloobity blah from Blobbity Blue had to say about this and that movie that were never officially announced by Disney and Lucasfilm. I think that that's a fantastic idea.
When I found you, I saw raw, untamed power. And beyond that, something truly special.
So I watched The Last Jedi on Saturday night. I didn't watch it alone. We have Melinda's parents are staying with us currently, her mom and stepdad. And it's always hard when it's not like my family with like my dad, my stepmom or my mom, and people visit. It's probably like this with most people, or I'm just weird. I always feel kind of bad. I want to make sure that I'm watching something that they want to watch. And so usually I do like a double feature every Friday and Saturday night. And so the first movie is something that we kind of all watch as a family, maybe something new, or Melinda picks something. And then normally kind of everybody goes off and does their own thing. And then I, grab my bottle of wine and I sit down and watch whatever I feel like watching. And it's usually something I've seen before. And it's usually Star Wars, and I was really, really looking forward to watching The Last Jedi again. I think I'd held off on watching it for a couple of weeks. So I sat down to watch it, and Ray and Cindy, her mom, ended up coming down to watch it with me as well. And then they'd seen it a few times already. Something interesting, though, happened this time around watching The Last Jedi. It, again, I can't say it enough. I love this movie. Oh, I know why I wanted to watch it. I wanted to watch it because I found that Movies with Mikey channel on YouTube. And I've only watched the stuff that he's done on Star Wars. But his Last Jedi one that I talked about last week was just absolutely fantastic. I ended up watching it twice. I watched it by myself, and then I made Melinda and Logan, my my 16-year-old, watch it. So I was really wanting to go back and visit the movie. But watching the movie again, I love this movie, and it doesn't get old to me. Which is interesting because JJ Abrams, I've always said, makes infinitely watchable films. I mean, they're movies, rewatchable films. All of his movies to me are, Super 8 and, of course, The Force Awakens, Mission Impossible 3, both Star Trek films. And I did like Star Trek Beyond quite a bit, but his movies are just infinitely rewatchable. The Last Jedi is becoming like that to me. And a lot of it has to do with how much that I've consumed from Rian Johnson as a director. I think I've tried to listen to almost every single long-form interview that he's done about The Last Jedi. And I don't get sick of watching it at all. Watching it this last time, though, for as weird as it sounds, and you being a Star Wars fan, I'm sure you can relate. It really did become Star Wars for me. It actually gave me the same feels the original trilogy does. And I don't know if I can even say if the prequels have done that. The original trilogy was so unique to that time period, being 5 years old when I first saw the film, and then growing up in the 80s with the VHS copies. I tweeted out the other day because it was of incredible significance, in my opinion, when I realized that I was a fan of Star Wars before I was a fan of anything else in my life. Star Wars was the first thing, other than like mom and dad, that I loved. I was a fan, if you look at me being a Depeche Mode fan, I didn't become a Depeche Mode fan until I was in my early teens. NASCAR, I didn't become a NASCAR fan until 2001. I mean, those are the three things that I enjoy the most. And, former driver, now retired Dale Jr., same thing. I was a Star Wars fan before I even knew what fandom was. And that really kind of stuck with me. I went, whoa, that's really incredible. And I can't help but wonder for guys and girls my age and close to it for all the original trilogy, for those that kind of grew up over the course of all three of those movies coming out over those many years, almost 10 years, right? How much of that rings true for them who saw these movies as little kids? Then you go and think about the prequel trilogy, right? Little kids watching the prequel trilogy who are now adults. Guys like Ryan Blaney, who's now my favorite NASCAR driver, who's a massive Star Wars fan. Oh, quick side note, by the way, NASCAR is making Star Wars themed gear that you can go and buy on the website, and apparently Ryan Blaney is going to be making his own Ryan Blaney NASCAR Star Wars stuff to buy. I talk about worlds colliding. How amazing is that? Like, one of my three big fandom things is coming together as one. It's amazing. Now, if I could just get like Depeche Mode to do Star Wars music, I don't know. So anyway, I bet that's the same thing when it comes to kids who watched those, the Star Wars movies and the prequels is what I'm trying to say. The prequels as kids becoming a fan of Star Wars and it being at that time the first thing that they ever became a fan of, right? I'm wondering, and we got into this quite a bit if you didn't listen to last week's show, but I'm wondering if this kind of trend of the families and kids is going to continue. My boys like Star Wars, but they're not as into it as I am. And that's okay, but they're fans of other things. They love it because daddy loves it and mommy loves it, but they don't love it the way that I do. So, getting back to The Last Jedi, watching it this last time when the logo came, when the Star Wars came up on the screen and the crawl rolled, I actually got those feels that I still get watching episodes 4, 5, and 6. And I thought that was really, really cool. And there's no part of the movie that I want to miss. I had to get up at one point to, I know what I had to do. Oh, I had to go refill my wine glass and use the restroom and grab like a little snack in the middle of the movie. And I didn't want to be rude and pause it for the other people watching because they were enjoying it. And I'd seen it so many times, but at the same time, I really had a hard time figuring out when I wanted to leave. Because when I first saw it in the theater, the time when I would leave would be over the Canto Bight sequence. And probably the jail scene on Canto Bight when they first meet DJ. Arguably like the blandest moment in the movie. It's just a conversation between them in sort of a very dark space that doesn't really have anything aesthetic to look at. But even this time around, it's like, no, I kind of want to see this scene too. It just, again, the power of that movie, and I also thought a little bit this time around more so about Luke Skywalker. And I don't know what your viewing habits are, but with these movies that you watch sort of on repeat, being all the Star Wars films, I know there are certain parts of the movie that I look forward to watching on different views. Love the opening sequence, right? So, I really want to watch the opening sequence of Last Jedi again. And then another time when I watch, I go, I'm really looking forward to the Canto Bight and the Father Years sequence. The one shot where they cut off the racetrack before they come crashing through the casino. I love that when they're galloping and the music's, reaching its peak. Just fantastic. This time around, it was the end. And it was Luke Skywalker and Kylo Ren. And their standoff on Crate that I was most looking forward to, and I really kind of focused on Luke's story watching it this time around, and thinking about it more so than I had in the past, and I realized how perfect a conclusion to Luke's story arc that The Last Jedi really was. I know what a portion of the fandom has to say into that. That's just, hey man, my name's Paul, that's between y'all. And I don't want to go over old ground of talking about Luke and his arc again, but if you go back to the beginning of A New Hope and Luke's character, I can't get involved. I've got work to do. It's not that I like the Empire. I hate it, but there's, right? It's all so far away from here, and how he was rejecting the hero's call until he was swept up into the story and he embraced the hero's call. It's no surprise to me that in his old age that Luke in The Last Jedi was still Luke. And he's like, oh man, I blew it. I don't want to get involved in this. What do you think I'm going to do? Grab a laser sword and stare down all the First Order? I mean, he spends the majority of the movie, again, rejecting the hero's call, and then only through Yoda. We are what they grow beyond. Is Luke able to finally realize that in his failure, there's also teaching? Failure, the most powerful teaching. That moment between Luke and Yoda is so incredibly special and poignant. And Luke finally realizes, you know what? I was rejecting it again. And what does he do? He achieves victory in the perfect Jedi way. Perfect. His time was done. His goal, right? I mean, when you go back to him starting the academy, training a new group of Jedi, and one apprentice turned on him. Well, why was he training a new group of Jedi? Well, so that somebody could carry this on. So somebody else could be the light, these group of Jedi. But he made a mistake because he is a Jedi, but he's also only human. And humans make mistakes. And he didn't learn from that mistake until Yoda showed him, no, dude, you're missing the point. The books, they don't matter. Rey's already got it. I love hearing Yoda talk about Rey, by the way. Hearing Yoda when he talks about, hearing Yoda just, I'm not going to confuse this anymore. Hearing Yoda talk about Rey, the girl Rey, just so great, right? It's so fantastic to see this dude who was in all these films beforehand talking about this new generation and how Rey is the light. She doesn't need the books. She's already got what she needs. What you need to do is make sure that she can go and be that next light to balance out the darkness in the galaxy. So great. And Luke at the end, just stuffing it to Kylo Ren in what he did, showing Kylo Ren. And what would be amazing. This is the other part that I want to get to. The Last Jedi really was a gift for JJ Abrams. I've said it before, I'll say it again. People have complained because The Last Jedi, at the end of it, we're kind of back where we were. Snoke's gone, but nobody's really moved positions on the game board all that much. But they have. They've all grown. They've all really grown. They've all been put through the tests, and they've all learned valuable lessons, including Kylo Ren. And what's great about it is that in that moment at the end of The Last Jedi, when Luke, see you around, kid, and disappears after he knows that he's bested him, Luke gave Kylo the best lesson he possibly could, right? The rebellion is reborn today. Right? The war is just beginning, and I will not be the last Jedi. And he did it without having to fight him. Perfect and poetic. And it's a gift to JJ Abrams because it really is more like a 4-hour movie when you go Force Awakens all the way into The Last Jedi. And now JJ Abrams is handed all the characters that he created, apart from Snoke, who now have a whole movie's worth of depth and growth in them that JJ can now go and do whatever he wants with. I know that people have talked about, how are they going to finish this? What are they going to do? Well, Rian Johnson gave JJ Abrams the perfect setup for a guy that started it in The Force Awakens. He handed his characters back to JJ Abrams and said, all right, I took your characters. I didn't really push the timeline very long. You can go ahead and do that if you want, but I've put them through these trials, and now they've got all this rich backstory that you can go and play with and do whatever you want. And look, even with putting assumptions aside of what people would like to see when it comes to Rey and Ben Solo, right? Putting those things aside for a moment, Rian Johnson did sort of serve that up to him to allow JJ to kind of do whatever he wants. If JJ were not to go there, I don't believe it's going to happen, and don't get mad at me, I'm just throwing this out for pure speculation. But if JJ were to decide to not do anything with that, right? He has the ability to not do anything with that. I do firmly believe that he will. That's the compelling storyline here. But if he wanted to, he didn't have to. And that's to Rian Johnson's credit of having to tell a story based off of characters and actors and a story that he wasn't involved in crafting in The Force Awakens. And I really think that it was incredibly smart on Rian Johnson's part to decide, I'm going to pick this up right where The Force Awakens left off, and then I'm going to go and put all these characters through their paces and make them grow up through difficulty. And then I'll hand the baton back to JJ. I just personally think that was an incredibly smart and intelligent move, and I imagine that J.J. Abrams is incredibly happy at what he did, and we're going to get a better film in 9 because of it. We all know 9's going to be great, but a large part of the reason why Episode 9 is going to be great is because The Last Jedi was so carefully crafted and was also so great.
I've seen this raw strength only once before. It didn't scare me enough then. It does now.
All right, we've got a few minutes to go through your emails, talkshownerd@gmail.com. You can also find me on Twitter @TheMyNerdWorld or @Jon, Jon Justice, and leave a comment on YouTube as well. Sky Drathic writes, hey man, nice podcast as always. Damn, you're smart about Rian Johnson. Thinking that Rian would bring back the Old Republic, right? Like forcing the jerks who want something to watch the guy they didn't like. This would be 1, fantastic for Old Republic fans that are idiots, and 2, good for Rian Johnson fans, and 3, totally troll all the Star Wars toxic fans. I love this idea. Sky is going back to the comment that I had last week that I thought that the news was going to be that Rian Johnson would be tackling the time of the Old Republic in his own way. The fans would get both what they wanted and what they hated. I was wrong about that, obviously. The news was about the spin-off movies, as we talked about at the start of the show. But I still think it's a big possibility that Rian Johnson could be tackling that era. Aunt Vesuvi says, glad you mentioned Steele Saunders. He's such a joy, right? The Steel Wars podcast. He clearly loves Star Wars with the heart of a child, yet he's able to critique elements of it that don't appeal to him like an adult, yet never fixates on the negative. He's respectful and funny, and I hope more and more enthusiasts will grow to choose this philosophy. Zach Hamilton writes this. I just heard that the films after Episode 9 have been put on hold for some reason. I don't know exactly what to make of this. However, it might tie into whatever happened with Jade being unexpectedly removed from his Late Show interview. Yeah, as I explained, we went through that at the beginning part of the show. Be that as it may, never really got an explanation as to why JJ didn't do the show. It could have been for a 1,000 different reasons that had nothing even to do with Star Wars. But to that, I will say that I know that filming is supposed to start here in a couple weeks. I really do hope that maybe this week on the Star Wars show we get some news about 9, even just casting. Right? You got that rumor that seems to be fact, but that rumor of Billy D. Williams reprising Lando's role, that would be great to hear. Globe-trotting Tiffers writes, love this episode, and I agree that the joy Star Wars brings us is why we keep coming back along with the lessons taught. I can see them replacing Carrie Fisher, probably not with somebody as well-known as Meryl Streep. A lesser-known star is my guess. That's the pattern we've seen with many of the main characters in Star Wars. Not sure how I feel about this personally yet, just because it can be jarring to change actors. True. But I had no problem with Alden Ehrenreich as Han, so maybe I'd be just fine. I just gotta say, without getting too sappy, that you help keep my dream alive of someday helping in production or being a minor actor in Star Wars. Oh man, that's cool. If it ever happens, I attribute a lot of my drive to your podcast and enthusiasm and passion. Thank you, John. Wow. Holy cow. Thank you so much for saying that. Wow. I hadn't pre-read that, so I wasn't. So my apologies. I wasn't expecting that. I move all the comments to one sheet for I have this one note. There's one note on my laptop, and it's just called Star Wars Podcast Reactions. And I've kept a bunch of yours from a long time. Everybody's, right? I've kept a bunch of just sort of your quick lines about the show. I figured one day I'll use them to go and advertise when I go to advertise the show or to promote the show, because I don't really do that. So I don't really proofread these. I just kind of read them. So I wasn't expecting that globe-trotting Tiffers, but thank you. So let me stop for just a moment to comment on that, and thank you again. I've mentioned this many times. I do this show because for my love of Star Wars. I have my weekly radio show that I do where I talk news and politics, right? I've been doing, again, for those that don't know, been doing radio for 22 years. About 12 of those years has been doing news talk radio. And the Star Wars podcast is very cathartic for me. It provides me an opportunity to use my professional skill and job to talk about the thing that I really love. And this has been like the first week in a long, maybe ever, or at least in a long, long time, where doing my regular show has really, really gotten to me. And I won't get into any specifics. So I was really looking forward to doing the show this week, just because I needed to get a break from all the other nonsense and be able to use my voice to talk about Star Wars, right, and things that I enjoy. It means the world to me that somebody would find the podcast to be motivational in any way possible. So that's really, really cool, and I never would have expected a comment like that from anybody. I will say that it is kind of funny. For those that have been listening to the show, not ready to fully divulge this yet, but I've been working on a project for a couple of years now that is very near completion. It's going to take a lot more work to get it to where I'm ready to present it to the public, but I'm just about done with the main part of it. And my motivation for this has been Star Wars. My motivation for this project that I've been working on has been the creative element of Star Wars and everybody who's created Star Wars, and Rian Johnson all the way down to George Lucas, who started it all. So there's a weird sort of synergy, and it means a lot to me to have a comment of somebody saying that they could attribute any amount of their efforts towards hearing the show, because really I give the credit to Star Wars, because Star Wars gave me the ability to do something and inspired me to do something that I never, ever would have thought that I would do. Never in a million years. I will share it with you. Absolutely. I can't wait to share it with the podcast when it's ready to be shared. And hopefully in the next couple of months, I'll be able to at least give you, and this is where the preview is going to happen. I'm going to, the first public place that this project I've been working on will be known, will be on the show. I made that decision a long time ago. I will unleash it to the world at some point in time, but the place where I plan on talking about it first is going to be the show, because Star Wars is what inspired me. All right, let's get back to some more comments here. Teeny243 writes this. It fits with the hints talking about my rumor and what I thought about last week that I was wrong about with the news. The haters get what they wanted, a lot less Star Wars, but in the way that they will not like. An Obi-Wan movie apparently everyone goes bye-bye, while Lucasfilm still supports the Rian Johnson's trilogy. Okay, so Teeny243 is talking about the actual news that came out. I find it hilarious. It's such a big middle finger to the haters. I'd even find it more funny if I had not actually looked forward to Obi-Wan myself, you and fangirl here. Yeah, I'll watch any Star Wars movie. I'm more curious about an Obi-Wan Kenobi film. I don't have any clamoring desire for one, but I like Ewan McGregor as Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? I think that it would be really fascinating. Okay, hear me out on this. I think it would be really fascinating if they were able to do an Obi-Wan Kenobi movie that maybe took place, many years with a young Luke, but maybe during the film, kind of like they did a time jump in Solo, A Star Wars Story, where we actually find out what Obi-Wan Kenobi was doing on the day that he found Luke out in the desert. How did Obi-Wan Kenobi know he was there? I think that's really fascinating, right? Was he keeping an eye on him? Was he aware that R2-D2 was on the planet? Was he aware of what happened? That, to me, would be really, really interesting. Is why did Obi-Wan Kenobi, on that particular day, choose to walk out of his hut to go find Luke and R2-D2 and C-3PO in the desert? I think that would be really cool to see. All right, this is still from Teeny243, talking about Reylo Baby, that theory and rumor that was out there last week. Still not a big fan of the Reylo Baby theory for a lot of reasons, but I trust that if it happens, JJ will handle it well. Carrie Fisher, I think, would have found that idea ludicrous, that a character as iconic as Princess Leia would die with her. She would have wanted Leia's story told as long as there's still a story to tell. And I think there is. Great show. Thank you, Teeny. Appreciate that. Mike B says this. Enjoyed your show as always. In terms of fandom disputes, it deeply saddens me to see how far it's gotten. I'm a millennial, but I enjoy the originals for what they are. I enjoy the prequels, but can understand what people dislike about them, right? And I was seriously hoping the sequels would be something that those who grew up with the OT and those who grew up with the prequel trilogy would be able to enjoy together. And maybe pass on the torch to the kids of today. Keep up the good work. Yeah, I agree with you. This is the world we live in now. I'm not going to go down that road right now because this is going to make me upset. Eponine Reed says this. I know I'm in the minority. I know, but I felt extreme joy when Poe took Rey's hand at the end of The Last Jedi. I would like to mention, I don't feel a lot of joy, period, in my life. But I felt like Rey and I finally met my Prince Charming. If that baby rumor is true, I hope so hard that it's Poe and Rey's baby. Out of all the love affairs in movies, I need Poe and Rey. All right, so I'm only laughing. I'm not. I hope you find more joy in your life. I hope this podcast brings you a minuscule of joy. Eponine reads. So, and I hope the reason why you don't have a lot isn't anything that's serious, right? Life is way, 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 way too short. Okay, that's why we're here, right? We're here to enjoy things. But the the Poe and Rey look at the end of The Last Jedi, I thought about this watching over the weekend. It's both of those two. Okay, all right. You got to start with Oscar Isaacs first. Okay, let me get this out. Oscar Isaacs, it wasn't me that said it, but somebody was like, that dude could charm like a lamp, right? I mean, the guy is just a charming dude. He's just got that about him. It also makes him, like, when he's a bad guy, he's a good bad guy, because of that, too. Like, he plays an equally good bad guy, but when he's a good guy, he's just an incredibly charming dude. The thing about that moment is, one, you've got Oscar Isaac, Poe Dameron's charm. But the bigger thing to me is that it's the only one of maybe 3 moments between The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi where you see Daisy Ridley with that big, wide smile. Daisy Ridley is one of those actresses, just people. She's got like a dozen different faces. And I've mentioned this before, but the producer of my radio show, her name is Samantha, 23 years old, and she has that same quality where her face can just look drastically different depending on her facial expression. And not everybody has it. And I know you may think, well, that's everybody. No, not it. This is different. There's just some people that just have incredibly unique faces, right? Look at the face. If you look at Daisy Ridley's face at the beginning of The Force Awakens when she is trying to decide whether or not she wants to bring BB-8 back to her home. And she kind of turns her head and has an look on her face. She looks way different than she does when she has a resting face. You see her smile briefly when she says, "My name's Rey," but it's still not the full sort of Daisy Ridley smile. You see her smile and kind of wink a little bit when they arrive at Maz Kanata's castle after Han asks her to join him, right? Chewie kind of likes it. She just has a little sort of nose smirk. And that's kind of it. You get a little bit of a smirk in the Millennium Falcon before they leave for Octo at the end of The Force Awakens. And then the only time in The Force Awakens when you really get the smile is when she's in the Falcon and she's in the gunner turret. But I'm going to argue that the biggest smile that she ever shows in both of those films is when she meets Poe. And I think for that reason, I see it more as 2 individuals at a club who are looking to hook up and have been staring at each other all night. So, okay. Wow, I really went off there, didn't I? That was unexpected. I'm sorry. Let's get... you know what? I'll let Luke help me out.
This is not going to go the way you think.
Yeah, apparently not. All right, we'll wrap up with friend of the show, Jennifer Oliver. I agree, John, that this is bigger than that regarding Rey getting Luke to come back with her. If JJ takes what Rian Johnson accomplished in The Last Jedi, we'll see the culmination of it all. And whether all fans admit it or not, it will be so much bigger than that, and it will be epic. The Last Jedi only excited me for more possibilities. I didn't even get... I didn't even get the Reylo thing then, LOL. Now I'm like, oh yeah, it's all over TFA too. I love hearing others' thoughts on how it all may end. It would be okay with me if they brought a sub in for Carrie Fisher, but I just don't think they will. I mean, she was already weakened, especially with the time jump, and I don't think they will. But if sitting down to 9, they have, to watch 9, they have Leia, I'll be stoked. I'd love for Leia to know her grandchild. She gave a little laugh there. Yeah, right. That was so crazy you mentioned movies with Mikey. I just watched his Star Wars vids like 2 days before your podcast. Must have some of the same triggers for your YouTube suggestions, right? I know, right? Yeah. Well, it's funny because I actually had those on my watch list forever and I hadn't watched them. So we're just zeroed in on each other, apparently. I really enjoyed it, too. So keep it up. Loving this weekly, positive, exciting Star Wars infusion. All right, let's wrap up with this. Here's a thought for you, and one of the other comments. First off, thank you everybody for the comments, and my apology reads for wiping out on that one. How great would it be? Gosh, have I done this? Am I losing my mind? I thought about this. There was a rumor that came out yesterday. Actually, I can go there right now. I got the internet up in front of me. I'll do that. There was a rumor that came up. You get all these leaks from people on Star Wars Reddit leaks where they talk about, my uncle works and saw some art. Okay? That's so funny. Somebody just posted another 4chan post from back in March, months before Star Wars Resistance was officially announced. So far, what's been said lines up and confirms. Okay, I won't go into that right now. Anyway, there was a rumor that came out that apparently there was some concept art that had Ben Solo / Kylo Ren at the helm of the Millennium Falcon. That would be, and maybe I've mentioned this before, I think one of the most amazing finishes to these movies, in getting everybody where they need to be, right, in these films. When it comes to, let's just go down the road for just a second. When it comes to Rey and Ben Solo, let's assume he's going to be redeemed, right? And I'm generally speaking of that opinion in some way, shape, or form. He's going to have to be redeemed somehow. We can't have the Skywalker line end with another tragedy. Whether or not, and I've said it before, he makes it in that redemption remains to be seen. But how great would it be if JJ is successfully able to redeem Kylo Ren and bring Ben Solo back, but he can't be with everybody else because of the things that he's done, right? And he and Rey end up together because it's the balance, right? So since they're the light and the dark, having them go off on their own is the only way to truly bring peace to the galaxy, having the First Order defeated, okay? And one of the final moments of the film is Ben and Rey taking Chewbacca back to Kashyyyk to finally get back to his home after all this time. And Chewbacca essentially handing the Millennium Falcon over to Ben, knowing that it was his father's ship. And then you have the equivalent of, the riding off into the sunset of Rey and Ben Solo in the Millennium Falcon with everybody else in their respective places. I just think that would be, I get goosebumps just thinking about it. That would be incredible. Especially when you consider Chewbacca and how important that he's been for all these films. And then, we kind of nice tie-in to Solo as well, right? Oh, that'd be great. I love Star Wars. And I love the fact that you download the show. Thank you so much for spending time with the show once again this week. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. And the fact you guys drop me messages, it's great. And I can't wait at some point in time to share with you what it is that I've been working on. Most of you are smart enough. I may have even mentioned it at one point in time in passing. But I'm looking forward to sharing it with you. And those that, if I haven't mentioned it, you're smart enough to kind of figure out based off of what I said, what it is that I'm working on. So I can't wait to share that with you one day. So I know that about a week from now, I'll be sharing episode number 130 with you of the My Nerd World of Star Wars podcast. Until then, I hope that you have a fantastic week. Bye.
The Force will be with you, always.
My Nerd World.